In this video, I'd like to show you the concept of intrinsic and extrinsic ligaments as it relates to our acromioclavicular joint. We also learned this joint really early on in my course. So already on the board, I've drawn for you a scapula and a clavicle. You're looking at an anterior view. We know that because this landmark, the coracoid process, is sticking out at us. We also can see our acromioclavicular joint, which is the lateral end of our clavicle, uniting with the acromion for that joint. This is another synovial joint. It's a plain gliding joint. It also has an articular disc like the sternoclavicular joint did. Like all synovial joints, the end of the acromion and the end of the clavicle are bound together by a fibrous joint capsule, which I'll just sketch in here. Okay, and like in other synovial joints, we know that the capsule thickness is different sometimes, depending on which aspect of the joint you're on. In this case, we have a thickening mostly superiorly, so I'm just going to sketch in a thickening here. This is still part of the fibrous joint capsule. It's just thicker than it is in other places. And when we have thickenings of the fibrous joint capsule, we call those intrinsic ligaments. So I'm going to put a number 1 here. Number 1 is going to be referred to as the acromioclavicular ligament. And because this is simply a thickening of the fibrous joint capsule, this is an intrinsic ligament. Now, this isn't the only ligament that provides support to this joint. We have another pair of ligaments that come off the coracoid process and run up to the clavicle. And we consider these together, so I'll draw them as 2 separate pieces. Call them 2A and 2B. So 2A is more lateral. This is our trapezoid ligament. The 2B is our conoid ligament. We saw landmarks for each of these ligaments when we looked at the inferior surface of the clavicle. And these 2 ligaments together can be referred to as coracoclavicular ligaments. And of course, these are all going to be extrinsic because while they're close to the joint and they provide support to help maintain the integrity of that joint, they're not thickenings of the fibrous joint capsule, so they're not intrinsic ligaments. The last ligament I'm going to add is also going to be extrinsic, and I'm going to color it a different color. It's just a little bit different. This is the ligament that runs between the coracoid process and the acromion. So we call this the coracoacromial ligament. It helps to form the coracoacromial arch, if you're familiar with that. It's an interesting ligament because while it moves from one bone to bone, these 2 landmarks, the coracoid process and the acromion, are on the same bone. So we don't actually create any tension between those 2 landmarks because that bone moves together all of the time. So that one's a little bit different, but certainly still is going to be extrinsic. It's not a thickening of a joint capsule.